Welcome, everyone, to Vision Untethered Conversations with Inspirational Leaders. My name is Jill Simonds. I'm founder of Savvy Strategic Partners, a dedicated leadership team of fractional executives who are executing vision, increasing business value, and helping founders realize freedom. I am so excited to introduce my special guest today, a powerhouse when it comes to helping businesses break through ceilings and achieve sustainable, scalable growth. I'm thrilled to welcome and introduce Scott Elser of Next Level Growth, a premier business operating system and coaching firm for entrepreneurial companies that want to achieve transformation. Scott has spent decades working with leadership teams across the country, helping them align around a common vision, execute with discipline, and build high performing cultures that attract and retain top talent. Scott is also working on a book due to hit shelves in 2026. I'm very excited about this personally. It is called Defy Gravity, exploring the things as business leaders that pull us down and surrounding ourselves with people who provide lift so that business can soar. Thank you so much, Scott, for being here today.
I'm super excited, Jill. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, let's just dive right into it.
All right.
What inspired your journey into business ownership and chose you to led you to choose this path specifically?
Well, so about 2007, I was with Grey Advertising, one of the largest in the world. I was reporting to the chairman and chief executive officer there. Before that, I had come from McCann Erickson, which is another one of the biggest in the world. And I did the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. I left a really great job with a very stable company and decided my co-founder and I, Launchpad, which was the agency we founded, decided we could do it better. So we both left the agency. We started working out on my front porch in my beach house in Asbury Park, New Jersey, home of Bruce Springsteen, and or at least
Okay.
adopted home of Bruce Springsteen. And we had no clients. We didn't have much money. We just sort of had a dream and a belief that we could do it better and have a lot more fun doing it. And Launchpad was born. And after a couple of difficult, really kind of the first difficult year, getting ourselves established and starting to drive revenue, we had liftoff kind of as the plane scraped the trees coming off the runway. We made it up, and we never looked back from there. We wound up becoming an
Mm,
Inc. 500 business. We were Inc. 5000 four times, and really built what
nice.
we felt was a pretty special place with a pretty amazing culture.
Amazing. And then how does your purpose then align and purpose and just that what drives you in life? How does that align with the unique challenges you faced in the scaling of that business? And then in addition, obviously what you do now in coaching other entrepreneurial businesses to scale.
Absolutely. We didn't know what operating systems were back in those days. We just sort of knew
Hmm.
what we wanted to. And the first place that we wanted to start was big companies and big agencies can have interesting personalities to them. And we
Yeah.
decided that our culture was going to be two things. Number one, we wanted to build a place that had no assholes. That we just absolutely believed that we had to surround ourselves with people we wanted to be working with every day. And the second thing was we wanted to build a place that if we didn't own it, we would choose to work there. And that was a bar that we
Mm,
always set for ourselves.
love
Because
that.
at the end of the day, keeping great people required you to build a great place to work. And the third was, and I've always been super proud of this, we built a place that we felt was sort of, to use the term, a teaching hospital. We wanted to build a place where people could see, touch, and feel different things, get more exposure into the types of work that they might want to do in the future, not just the stuff they were
Mm,
charged to do with today. What we knew at the time was, as a small agency, we couldn't afford to pay big agency prices and salaries for things, nor did we have the resources. But what we
hmm.
needed to do is take amazing care to really understand what our young people wanted to accomplish in their
Yeah.
lives down the road, having nothing to do with us, and then give
Yeah.
them the opportunities to be able to touch those functions, to be able to really explore different types of things. And we had people go from account management to creative to strategy. We had people who wanted to dive into new business, and it's been fun looking at those people now, 10, 15, almost 20 years later now, who actually
Wow.
have become real leaders in the space in the roles that they got to expose themselves for the very first time at Launchpad in. And that's been very, very special for me. I just saw somebody become the chief growth officer of a major agency. And we gave her a first chance to do new business. And those kinds of things really show that
Yeah.
the culture that we built and the foundation of that actually really did come true for a lot of people. So that was my
Hmm.
entree into the entrepreneurial world. But as I mentioned, I didn't have
Hmm.
any exposure with operating systems, so things like that. And I took over an agency in Phoenix, and all of a sudden, got exposed to that for the first time. And I just kept kind of smacking myself in the head, wondering why I hadn't done this stuff when I was running the agency that I built, because my life would have been
Hmm.
markedly different. And I really became obsessed about working with entrepreneurs, taking the things that I've learned, both what I did well, but honestly, what I've
Yeah.
the mistakes I made and some of the things I wish I'd done differently, being
Yep.
really transparent about all of that stuff and really helping them achieve things much faster and easier than I could, get their life back in a lot of ways. By
Yeah.
doing the things that I'd wished I'd done. I've really
Hmm.
enjoyed it. It's been the most satisfying part of my career. And that's kind of my entrepreneurial journey in a nutshell, even though there's a few more steps in there, but I won't bore you with those.
Yeah, love that. Beautiful story. Yeah. And helping others, not only in the business that you led and the agency that you grew, rise to their potential, but then beyond that, the other business owners, that same approach really, and or mission, purpose of learning from you. We there's so much to learn from what we do, what not to do, right?
Yes.
So I love that. Well, my it kind of already answers my next question for you, or that I had for you. But maybe there's something very pivotal in this specific was what is one failure that you've encountered in the business journey? Was that lack of a system, or um, what would you say is kind of a pivotal failure you encountered? How did you shape it to be in the benefit of growth strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's a few I could draw from. We all have them,
Yeah.
right? But I think one of those was when I was leading Launchpad. My business partner and I were kind of locked at the hip. In fact, we shared an office on purpose no matter where we went. We always got a place big enough that we could share it because we were that collaborative. And I
Hmm.
ran our largest client, and I ran some other functions within the agency. And he
Hmm.
ran new business and a lot of the others that weren't as large. And then we would help each other strategically. And it's just how it worked. And one day, his wife got ill. It turned out they found something, and it was terminal cancer. And just like that, for the most part, he was just gone in the business. He was like,
Hmm.
David, you need to go home and deal with life. And while he tried to help a little bit, in reality, he just needed to go home. He was gone for about almost 18 months. So all of a
Hmm.
sudden, this whole business was thrust upon me,
Yeah.
and I had to do everything. And one of the things I told myself was I couldn't let anybody see me sweat, right? I had to make sure everybody felt like I had it all covered. Nothing was going to slip, not the smallest detail. The agency
Hmm.
was going to continue. And I put all of that on my shoulders without really rethinking how we were structuring the people that we had, the processes, anything else. I just dove
Yeah.
in and worked twice as hard. And I remember sitting on my front porch. It's actually the very beginning of my book, is recounting this particular moment. Sitting on my
Hmm.
porch about 9 months into this in Asbury Park. And I just was I wasn't myself. And I Googled signs of clinical depression. And as I went
Hmm.
through them, got this one, got this one, got this one, got this one. Like everything, while not a red light, was kind of this blinking orange light. And I knew that I was on my way to a dark place. And that's when
Hmm.
I realized I had to step back and think through how to lead the business differently, not just lead it more. And I think that's one of the things that I look at that as a mistake, because had I really just stepped back, had I been more understanding of how accountability charts work and structure and things like that, had I put more systems in place, I could
Yeah.
have really led that business better. And we did well. It wasn't that we didn't, but it damn near killed me. And I think that's one of the things in terms of what I work on now with so many business owners is how to put the systems, the people, the processes in place to be able to lead their business without having the business leading them. And I let the business lead me for a long time, and it practically
Hmm.
broke me.
Oh man. I think there's so many, including myself, so many of us hearing that. that can fully relate. And I love what you said about not necessarily doing more, but doing better,
Yeah.
different,
And
different,
yes.
right? It doesn't mean that because there's a growth trajectory ahead of you, or you lose somebody instrumental in the business's growth, that means you're the automatic fill-in. I think that's where if we can catch ourselves, if someone can stop in that moment, take the step back to realize what is going to be different here, what is the shift it's going to require that's not going to burn me out or worse, put me in a position of, yeah, so much mental strain or nearly kill us.
Yeah, so
So,
many business owners take so much on their shoulders, and if you put
hmm
the weight of the world on your shoulders, it's probably going to crush you, right?
yeah,
You have to figure out how to balance that and be able to achieve not just
absolutely.
your business dreams, but your dreams that include your business.
Yeah, yeah. Man, talk about learning that the hard way too. It's a really relatable story that I think I hear time and time again. So,
Yeah.
what are some indicators for you that a business owner is too deeply involved? And then how is that limiting the company's ability to actually scale and grow?
Absolutely. There's a great, I don't remember who said it, probably many people, but there's a great expression. The bottleneck is always at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things you see a lot are every decision needs to come through the leader. When you
Mm-hmm.
see that, the team is either too afraid to actually go ahead and take chances, or they don't know
Right.
the parameters by which they should. People
Mm-hmm.
are very careful, and
Right.
that's just human nature. You try to protect yourself from harm.
Mm-hmm.
And when in fact you can have someone tell you what to do and therefore take the consequences, most people will choose to do that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you see is that expectations aren't clear, so everything rises to the top. One of the things that's also really clear is when you see somebody diving in, and we see this all the time, diving in to fill somebody else's shoes
Mm-hmm.
because they're not capable of doing it, and they get sucked in. And I session rooms I hear all the time, I keep having to do this, no one else can do this. Well, you've got somebody who should, or you need to get somebody who can, but the
Mm-hmm.
reality of it is you can't just excuse it and do it. So you see those
Right.
kinds of things, right? um
All the
my some
time.
of Absolutely. And some of my symptoms were, um, remember sitting down with the kids at one point, about 3 months into the scenario I just shared with you, and sitting them
Mm-hmm.
down, and they were, I think, 12 and 10, or 13 and 11 at the time. So old enough to know, but young enough to not understand. And I had to
Mm-hmm.
explain to them, like, here's what's going on, and this is why I just can't be that present for a while. Like, I'm going to try to be there, but I'm not sure I'm going to be mentally there a lot of times because I just have to do this. And when you start having conversations like that, the business is owning you. And it's time to kind of take a step back and figure out, how do I fix that? One of the real things, and this was kind of the genesis of the book that I'm writing,
Mm-hmm.
is it's called Defy Gravity. And it's all about the concept that when you don't have the right people underneath you, people is the number one challenge. We excuse them, we let things go, we get
Mm-hmm.
frustrated, we don't solve them. But when you don't have the right people underneath you, the job still needs to get done. And when it
Yeah.
needs to get done, guess who gets to do it? Well, you do. And when you do that job, guess whose job you're not doing? Your own, right? So
Yeah.
it's literally gravity is pulling you down. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
concept from aviation that my wife and my stepson, who are both in aviation families, really
Mm-hmm.
kind of drilled into my head, which is the concept of lift and drag. Airplanes either experience lift or drag, and it's no different with businesses. And
Yep.
what's important is to really be able to understand who are the people who are providing you lift, who are bringing you up, who are bringing the business up, and who are the people who are providing drag, slowing the business down, pulling you down, pulling their respective managers down, and really understand, how do you increase the amount of people in the business who are there providing you lift, and how do you recognize, keep, and enable them to be able to soar
Mm-hmm.
on their own. And the more you do
Yeah.
that, the better off you are. And we tend to forget that because we firefight instead of actually fix things. And when you're constantly firefighting, that's one of those signs that you have that the business is sort of broken, and you need to rethink how you're doing, not just what you're doing.
Ah, so well said. Thank you. So good.
Thank you.
So yeah, with that, knowing that the right people around us, and no matter what business we're in, no matter what industry we're in, no matter what we do in business, we are in the business of people. And it'll
Yes.
always and forever be that way, right? Humans still, regardless of technological advances, how well we're expanding in that, are always going to require a human element. How, and maybe this is giving away, kind of how you walk through this with business owners for your book is how do you design? How does a business owner design a system? And I'm talking people system, right?
Yeah.
Not just systems, automations, processes, but how do you design a people system that allows companies to actually thrive without you being pulled in and held down by the gravity of it all?
That's a great question. One of the first places to start is with incredible clarity around what people are accountable for. If you
Mm,
think about a football team, right? There's two different ways that you can play football.
hmm
11 people on a field, all knowing what their role is in any given play, and
hmm
all knowing what everybody else's role is and where the play's supposed to go and working as a team, or hey, everybody go long, right? And just kind of anarchy, right? And as much as that's kind of silly, in reality, a lot of businesses are in the let's just all go long space, right? They're a first grade soccer team that are everybody's running up to the ball when it's kicked up. Even the goalie is like trying to score. And the reality of it is you can't scale a business that way. When you're
Right.
really small, what worked for you then was a little bit of chaos, like everybody just sort of jumping into everything. But as you scale, you have to have clarity of expectations. And
hmm
that clarity starts with having a really clear accountability chart. Now, I know a lot of your listeners are probably familiar with some variation of accountability chart. We do it
hmm
as a way that I think is a bit deeper than most. We do the next level accountability chart, and I'll explain
hmm
that.
Yeah.
So every seat, every job in the company should have an incredibly clear mission statement. Why does this job exist, right? Why are we paying money for this seat to exist? And
Mm,
along with that, imagine I gave you four targets and one arrow and said, I want you to hit the best one. You would take your best shot. Maybe you'd hit one, but who knows if it's the right one, right? But we give
right.
people a lot of KPIs. What you want to do is create what is the most critical outcome, as close as you can get to ROI in that seat, that defines at the end of the day, if you're living your mission, this is the metric, the most critical outcome you are here to drive.
Yeah.
And then really focus on a lot of accountability chart structures focus on kind of bullet points of things. You own customer service.
hmm
But what we want to focus on is every single day when you come into work, what do you obsess about? What do you obsess
Mm,
about being outstanding, right? We want to set a
right.
higher expectation because at the end of the day, you want to have right people, right seats, and right person, right seat in every seat. But don't you want a team of A players, right? You want the starting five of the 1990 Chicago Bulls on your team, and you want that in
hmm
every seat. So, first off, lining them up with here's your mission, here's how we know you're successful at that mission, and here's five-ish things that you need to obsess about every single day when you come into work being amazing. So it's not customer service, it's delivering a superior customer experience. That's really what you
hmm
should be obsessing about. That's what you need to own. So
Right.
it's not just about owning a function and being accountable for it, it's obsessing about an outcome. And
Yep.
what do you need to do to be able to accomplish that? So those are things that are first and foremost in terms of really having that kind of a system in place. Then you've got to have
Absolutely.
a really clear purpose.
hmm
Everybody needs to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And I think one of the things that people don't do is they explain the what, but they don't take the time to explain the why and get people all centered around the why. If you don't do
hmm
the why, you can tell people to do something and they can do what you ask them to. But if they really understand the why, they're much more motivated and they can solve
hmm
problems much greater than they could if you just told them what to do. Right.
Right. Yeah.
And we forget about that. People's creativity, people's ability to actually get in and leverage their expertise in ways that you didn't even know that existed is why you have them there. Yet we tell people what to do, but not why they're doing it. And all of a sudden that we wonder why, in fact, they have done the minimum threshold they could to satisfy the need. It's all they knew to do, right?
Hmm.
And then you've got to have great playbooks. You've got to be able to have people every single day executing the same way every time and make sure that everybody knows the plays, right? Everybody understands how do we get things done. One of the things that I talked about a little bit is setting each other up for success. We don't do that
Yeah.
either. We focus on processes that enable us to work efficiently, but not
Hmm.
processes that set the next person up in that process up for
Right.
success. So you've got to
Exactly.
look at those handoffs and make sure that you're giving the person in the relay race the baton in exactly the right place at the right time. That's going to enable them to sprint, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
those are some of the things that you do to be able to build that system. And then you have clear expectations for people in terms of how do you help them grow? How do you make sure you're really retaining those A players and
Right.
encouraging them to be more aggressive and creative? And how do you set
Hmm.
expectations for what you want people to decide in their jobs, what you want them to decide but tell you about, what you want them to decide but bring you before they do it so that you can approve it
Hmm.
or coach them? And we don't do that. So we wonder why decisions roll uphill. And it's because, again, we don't provide the clarity of the decisions we want people to make and then hold them accountable to it.
Yeah.
And that
Right.
accountability is the other most important thing, is setting this all up and then actually holding people accountable to it, which
Hmm.
is in a lot of ways the hardest part because it's the human part of it. But we don't like to hold people accountable. And
Right.
that's a big part of what needs to happen because none of these systems work if you don't actually hold
Exactly.
people accountable to them, including yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and something that you said struck another conversation and kind of a chord because I've noticed a theme with setting the next individual or team or whatever that is that, handoff of the torch up for success. What we hear a lot is, and maybe it's not said in this way directly, but there's an underlying fear with people involved in developing process, getting process or a system out of their head and into globalized knowledge, is almost this fear that it puts them at risk because no longer now is this dependent upon me to know how to do and to do it well. My job security is based on me knowing this, not the rest of the
Right.
company or creating this as institutional knowledge for us to use. How do you how do you approach that? How do you frame that in a way? I mean, there's obviously some deeper rooted problems then, if that is the case in terms of
Right.
trust in the company, but it's surprising how often I hear that. So, what's kind of approach to that? Like, well, I got it. It's almost like, I got it. We don't need to, make a big documentation or process or standard procedures for how we do this because they
Right.
want to hold it.
And I think part of that is recognizing that in most companies, nothing happens in the vacuum of one silo. Work moves
Hmm.
across different functions within a company.
Right.
And a lot of times what I do is I'll ask teams like, do we want to win do we want to win an award or do we want to win the Super Bowl? If you want to
Hmm.
win an award, you can go on yourself. You can. Dan Fouts was an amazing quarterback who met some of your listeners will recognize and some won't. But he was one of the
Hmm.
best passers in the history of football. He played for San Diego back in the
Hmm.
70s and 80s. Now we all remember Joe Montana and Terry Bradshaw and Dan Reed. They all won Super Bowls. Dan Fouts was probably a better passer than all of them, but we don't
Hmm.
really remember Dan Fouts that
Right.
much, and it's because he never won. So do we want to be
Hmm.
Dan Fouts or do we want to be Joe Montana? Right at the end of the day, let's all win a Super Bowl. And if you win the Super Bowl, it's not about playing your position well. It's about playing as a team in a way that
Mm,
is going to enable you to win almost every game. That
exactly.
requires you to set everybody else up for success, not just
Yeah,
do your own thing. And
exactly.
it also requires the other team members to hold each other accountable for delivering quality handoffs. I'll go back
Hmm.
to, and it's an analogy I've used a few times before, a relay race, right?
Right.
A great relay team is not necessarily the four fastest runners. I mean, they got to be
Hmm.
fast, but that's not what makes a great relay team. Sometimes the runners are maybe not quite as fast as somebody else you could pick, but they're people who understand how to work as a team, have great chemistry, and are willing to actually work to make sure that the person they're handing off to gets what they need, not just trying to cross in the shortest time, because the time is lost in the handoff. And business is
Hmm.
no different, right? If sales
Hmm.
closes a sale, but half the information they gave to operations to onboard is wrong or is
Right.
incomplete, well, guess what? You've created a huge amount of work. And then what happens is the finger pointing starts because, well, I gave them the sale. They didn't get it in. It took them twice as long. But then operations says, well, we didn't get what we needed. And we went down
Right.
5 rabbit holes trying to solve things. So, and
Exactly.
then everybody complains at each other instead of actually taking accountability. So having
Yep.
those handoffs and making it really clear, but making it clear why the hander offer, for lack of a better term, needs
Hmm.
to do that. Like, what's the purpose of it? And how does
Right.
that set the person up for success? That again, that why is so incredibly important because without that, it's like, why are they making me give all this information? But if they understand why all of that's important and they understand what the impact is downstream when they don't, all of a sudden you
Exactly.
see people getting on board.
Mm. So well said. I think, yeah, shoring it up in a way that paints this picture of where those successful handoffs are happening and how much better we are together when we're constantly reframing that. We're constantly iterating on that. And it has to be codified. It has to be instilled institutionally across the board all the way through the business in order for that to be a successful win through and through.
Yep. And it has to
So,
be enforced, right? At the end of the day,
yeah,
if somebody hands you a crappy input and you
right.
take it and do crappy work with it, whose
Right.
fault was it? Was it the person
Yeah.
that delivered the crappy input or the person who was willing to take it and run with it? I would
Yeah.
argue it's the second, right? So at the end of the day, that's when you've got to put on the issues list, hey, I'm not getting the input I need. You've got to escalate that. You've got to bring it up because at the end of the day, that's an upstream problem that needs to get solved. And most
Yeah.
people will just take the crap and run with it.
Hmm. Yeah. And then it just deteriorates more underneath
Yes,
the surface because nobody is speaking up about what it is they need to be more effective in their role. And then all the finger pointing happens because we're not asking for what it is we truly need in order to be effective. Garbage in, garbage out.
that's right.
So,
That's right.
and if someone's giving you garbage, but you're just taking it, you're creating, what it is you're creating could be so much better if you just knew what it is you need.
Absolutely. Hey, they must enjoy garbage. I'm going to keep throwing it at them. And
Yeah.
that's
If
what
this
happens.
works, yeah. So true. So, why is self awareness and our own personal growth essential for businesses and leaders aiming to detach from the day-to-day operations? How do our traits contribute, and knowing our traits, right? Knowing our weaknesses, knowing our blind spots contribute to long-term success?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think, when you think about it, there are very few people in this world that look in the mirror and actually see themselves back. They see some
Mm,
idealized version of themselves that falls in line with how they feel, not necessarily
hmm.
who they are.
Hmm.
And the most important thing, or one of the most important things, is to try to see yourself back, right? Strengths, weaknesses, we've all got them. And trying to understand how do you surround yourself with people that complement you. I've seen people who love to hire themselves, and it never works out because the goal is to hire people who complement you, who you complement, so that you can create a sum greater than its parts, not
Mm,
just an environment where a bunch of people think, act, and talk alike, right? So one of the things in the chapter in the book, talk about something my stepson came up with a term. He thinks differently, right? And back when he was in grammar
hmm.
school, he said, "Mom," not to me, obviously to my wife.
Hmm.
He said, "Mom, everybody spins to the right. Everybody kind of goes in the same direction, and I'm a left spinner." And I thought that was so incredibly insightful, right? Because it just creates this
Mm,
visual image. And you have to include left spinners in this whole thing. You've got to include people who don't think like you, who maybe
right.
make you uncomfortable. And you've got to listen to them. It doesn't mean you have to take everything they say, but they're going to push you in ways you couldn't possibly. So I had when I was running when I owned Launchpad,
Hmm.
we got the opportunity to pitch their CenturyLink's social media business, and they were our largest client, and it was my
Wow.
baby. I have a very close relationship, but my
Hmm.
head of strategy and my head of social wanted to do this. I was pretty skeptical, and I said, okay, let's dive in. And they're like, no, 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 you're sitting this one out. I'm like, what are you talking about, right? And I said, no,
Hmm.
no, this is ours. Get out of our way, and let us do this. So
Okay.
I trusted them because, again, social wasn't necessarily my thing back in the day. But I just decided I had to let go. And this was a fairly large opportunity for us. But I had to kind of look in the mirror and say, if these folks are going to grow, I need to let them do this. And the worst thing that
Hmm.
happens is we're no worse off than we were when we started.
Right.
So they wound up pitching the business. And when I started the meeting with my client, Pat, who was a good friend of mine, still is, um, I said, Pat, just so you know, I had almost nothing to do this. I didn't even see it until last night. So this is the team's work. I think you're going to like it. And they went through the pitch, which was amazing. And they finished, and there was this dead pause. And Pat's comment to me was, Scott, you need to do less more often, right? So, but they wrote a deck that was completely different than the one I would have written. And that was the
Yeah.
beauty of it, right? I let them apply their creativity. They had learned a lot. They were also incredibly capable and competent people.
Sure.
And, particularly with A players, I had to let my A players run.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest things in the world to do is to have that self-awareness to say, I'm willing to fail by
Hmm.
letting good people succeed, right? Willing to
Ah,
fail personally because I didn't run it, but also willing to fail. If we had lost that business, I was willing to do that to let them be able to take this pitch and run with it.
exactly.
And
To let it
that's
be their
really hard.
success too.
Absolutely. It was their success, not mine. And I think one of the
Mm,
things that it's easy to get lost in is that was the day that was probably my most satisfying day in the entire time I ran Launchpad. Because it was the
of
day I looked at
course.
it and said, I am not running an agency. I built an agency that can run without me, or at least that
Yes.
day, right? And that to
Yep.
me was a very special accomplishment. And most business leaders dream of that, but they won't
Hmm.
allow it to happen.
Yeah. Not at the risk of potentially failing. And that's
Right,
why, I think I can relate oftentimes to in my self-awareness and journey of fears that hold me back personally. I I can sum it down to, what if I lose all of it? What if
right,
what if I lose it all? What if we lose all? What if it just slips away? And it's
right.
it's easy to kind of to get caught up in this fear that one difficulty or failure or whatever we want to call it means the whole thing is done
Right.
for, right?
You know, I was
And
with the
so,
team. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh no, I was just
Uh,
gonna, yeah, tying that in. Go ahead.
yeah. So I was with the team a couple of years ago, and they were bemoaning the fact that the people underneath them never ever brought ideas or solutions. They just kind of waited to be told what to do. And we talked about it for a while, and I finally asked them, well, let me ask you this. What are they allowed to fail at? And there was dead silence in the room. And then finally somebody said, with a smile on their face, well, nothing. Right? Well, if you're not allowed to fail at anything, you take absolutely no chances, right? You just wait to be told. And that was part of the cultural challenge they had was you can't
Hmm.
push people out of the nest when in fact you make it impossible for them to fly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Got to get out of the way.
Absolutely.
No matter what the risk might be, the reward on the other side is ultimately what business owners want,
Yes.
what they're just dreaming of. And yet the thought of a failure and the risk of that and a failure on somebody else's behalf for them is so hard to let go
Yeah.
of. But
I
the
created
reward is so much bigger.
so much bigger. And I created
Hmm.
a tool that I share with my clients. I called it the
Hmm.
recoverable mistakes tool. And it's something I
Hmm.
preached for years, even back into the Launchpad days. There are
Hmm.
recoverable mistakes and non-recoverable mistakes. And you've
Right.
got to be able to identify what those look like. And the
Okay.
reality of it is you want to set clear expectations for people of what are those things? They're your job. Don't
Hmm.
even tell me about it. If you can't do this, we have a different problem, right? So what kinds of things are those? But then what are the
Hmm.
kinds of things that it's your job? I want you to do it. I want you to take action. But I want to know after the fact what you did because I want to coach you. I want to make sure that those things are being done right. But go do it. Don't come to me and ask me. Do it. Just tell me afterwards. Then what
Hmm.
are those things that, and those are recoverable mistakes. I'm willing to let you make those mistakes and then we'll take it from there. And then you've got things that are decisions I want you to make. But before you
Hmm.
actually act, I need to get to give you my approval. And those are unrecoverable mistakes. I don't want you to come to me with a problem. I want you to come to me with a solution. But I
Yeah.
want you to do that solution in the context of letting me talk to you about that before you take action, because a mistake is pretty major, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's always just things we need to roll up our sleeves and do. But then I encourage people to use something that is called the 1-3-1 rule, certainly to make this one up. But um, anytime you come with something, especially in that last category, what's the one issue you have? What are three ways that you would solve it? And what is the one you recommend and why? Right. So you're trying to build not just a culture of people understanding that it's expected that they solve problems, but you're trying to teach people how to solve problems.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you can truly defy gravity.
Exactly. That's all the difference right there,
Yeah.
is teaching them how. Love it. Brilliant, Scott. I'm so excited for your book.
Thank
I
you.
personally want to know when it's ready, even if I can get a digital copy. I'm really excited to dive into it. So,
Absolutely. I certainly will. I'm just kind of early in the editorial process at this point. I've got
yep,
an agent. We're working on getting it published, but
great.
we're excited about that. And it's the first of about three or four that I'm working on. So I'm really excited about that as well.
Yay. That's amazing. I've personally learned so much from you. I know you've had a tremendous impact across so many entrepreneurs as well. But if others want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, what's the best place to find you?
Absolutely. Check us out, Next Level Growth. We are an operating system designed to help companies that want to be elite at what they do
Mhm.
truly reach their summit. It's nextlevelgrowth.com. And you can find me there. We've got a whole team of guides that are fantastic and a rich
Mhm.
operating system of tools that are going to help you climb to your summit.
Love it. Great. Thank you, Scott, so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom, as always.
I really appreciate you having me on. This was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Everyone else, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today.